the process of communication. So, do you have any doubts regarding whatever I had explained you yesterday? Is there any doubt? Do you have any doubts regarding anything that I had explained you yesterday? So, I would just like to quickly tell you again the elements that are included in the communication process are sender, message, encoding, media, receiver, decoding, and feedback. And noise is also another element which can be present anywhere during the process. So, noise is basically the hindrances, the barriers that we face during the communication process. All right. So, I had explained you about the elements. So, if you have any doubts, you can quickly ask me, or else I'll move to the next topic. So, I had also shared the notes. So, this is the steps that these are the steps that the communication process consists. So the communication process consists of the following steps, so go through it. I had already explained you, so if you do not understand something that is given here, so then you can just ask me. Okay, so I hope you have understood, and I hope there's no doubt. If you have any doubt, you can quickly ask me.
Hello, ma'am.
Okay, and you're not
Okay.
being able to understand or what? My voice is not clear. Whether my voice is clear or not, can you confirm?
Madam, it is clear.
It's clear, right? Some of them are not being able to hear
Hmm?
me properly. So, okay, then I shall continue. So, today I will be discussing about the barriers to communication, all right? So, this is also from the first unit itself. So, this is the next chapter of your first unit. Okay, so barriers to communication. So, yesterday I had already told you about noise. Okay, the noise are the barriers, असुविधाएं जो हम फेस करते हैं in the process of communication. So, that is basically known as the noise. So, उसी नॉइस को बैरियर बोलते हैं. ठीक है, बैरियर मीन्स द हिंड्रेंसेस दैट वी फेस, the obstacles, the factors that create certain problem in the process of communication, that is known as a barrier. That is known as a barrier in the process of communication. ठीक है, जो भी असुविधाएं हम फेस करते हैं उसको नॉइज बोलते हैं या बैरियर बोलते हैं. Now, this noise or these barriers can occur at any time. Okay, उस जो process मैंने दिखाया कल, there is no specific point that at this point the noise is going to occur, or at this point of time I am going to face a problem or a barrier or a hindrance. So there's no specific point, there is no specific uh, and there's no specific point of the noise. So it can occur at any point of the communication process. कभी भी हो सकता है, मैं बोल रही हूँ तभी भी हो सकता है, तुम्हें समझने में कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है while you got after you got the message, तो तब भी बैरियर हो सकता है. सो देर आर डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ बैरियर्स. ओके, जो कभी भी कम्युनिकेशन प्रोसेस के दौरान हो सकता है. ऑलराइट, now I am going to teach you the different types of barriers. So I shall start with the first barrier.
Ma'am.
Yes,
Hello, ma'am.
yes.
Ma'am.
Qua. Yes,
Hmm,
do you want to ask something?
কোন গ্রুপের কি ডিআরটি দিয়েছে এগুলা?
Do you want to ask something? Yes, Rishikesh Deka. Why have you joined the class? You don't have a class now. You had a class at 9:15. The DRT students, why have you joined the class now? DRT, please leave the room. You don't have a class now. You had a class at 9:15. You had missed the class.
Hello.
Okay. So the first barrier is psychological barrier. Okay. So psychology, when we hear this term psychology, we know that it is related to something. It is related to our mental state or our mind, isn't it? So I'm sure you have heard this term psychology. So when you hear this term psychology, this is directly related to your mental state or your uh, thoughts. Okay, your thoughts. So this psychological barrier occurs due to some reasons, and I have listed the reasons. Okay, I just give me 1 second. Okay, so I hope you can see the screen properly now. So psychological barrier is basically related to the mental issues which might create certain barriers to effective communication, which might create certain problems when we communicate with one another. Okay, so जब भी हम कुछ मेंटल स्टेट की वजह से, हमारे कुछ सोच की वजह से वी फेस सर्टेन बैरियर्स, सो दैट particular barrier is known as psychological barriers. So you will be able to understand it properly when I will be telling you the causes of psychological barrier. Okay, so I have listed some causes of psychological barrier. So the first cause is lack of attention. See, the first cause of a psychological barrier is lack of attention. When you do not concentrate and when you do not listen carefully, that is known as lack of attention, and this can be a barrier in the process of communication. This can act as a barrier in the process of communication. So, when the speaker is telling something, when a speaker is delivering the speech and you're not listening to the person, you're not listening to the speaker, then definitely you won't be able to understand what the speaker is trying to say, and that's how you will not understand the whole speech, and you might misunderstand the speaker, and there won't be a proper communication. So when you do not listen to the speaker properly, when you do not concentrate on what the other person is saying, then that can create a psychological barrier. ठीक है? लैक ऑफ अटेंशन की वजह से साइकोलॉजिकल बैरियर हो सकता है इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन। जब तुम किसी की बातें अच्छे से नहीं सुनते हो, जब कॉन्सेंट्रेट नहीं करते हो, तो दैट कैन क्रिएट अ साइकोलॉजिकल बैरियर इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन। ठीक है। Next is premature evaluation. So this is another cause of psychological barrier. So this is something that is related to conclusions and judgments. Okay, सुने बिना ही, जब पूरी बात सुने बिना ही you jump to the conclusion, or you have a judgment, you have a conclusion for that particular thing without listening to the whole speech, without listening to the other person, then it might cause psychological barrier. All right, so we should first of all try to listen to what the other person is trying to say, and we should always try to listen to the other person till the end. We should not jump into any conclusions before the speech is completed. All right, now for example, if you have gone to see a movie in a theater, okay, now if that movie is a thriller movie, so you are going to understand the secret, or you are going to understand the movie only at the end of the movie. You won't be able to find out or figure out what is going on in the movie in during the movie or in the middle of the movie, because it's a thriller movie and the secret will only be revealed towards the end of the movie. So if you go to see that kind of a movie, and if you just after 1 hour, if you just jump to a conclusion that this is going to be the end, okay, then you are creating a barrier. Because how you're creating a barrier? Because you have already jumped into a conclusion before the climax. So before the climax, before the speech is over, so if you jump into any conclusions, that causes psychological barriers, and that can create misunderstandings, because you have not listened to the whole thing, you have listened to only a part of the thing, and you have jumped into some conclusions, or you have started judging that person or that particular situation. All right, so that can cause psychological barrier. Next is poor retention. So retention, it refers to the capacity of your brain to store things, okay, to store things in your memory. So day to day we see a lot of things, we notice a few things, and then we remember only one or two things, isn't it? So the capacity of your brain to remember the things, and if you forget things, if you keep on forgetting things, the things which are important to you, that is known as poor retention. When you have low capacity to store things in your memory, when you keep on forgetting things, and especially important things, so then that is known as poor retention. Suppose you need to retain some information, you need to remember some information, but you're not being able to remember it, you're not being able to retain that particular information, and then that is going to create a barrier in the process of communication. So suppose a project has been given to you and a certain information has been shared to you, but you forgot half of the information, and you're not being able to retain the information, you're not being able to remember it, and you need to share all the information with your own team. So your boss is given the information, and you have not listened to your boss properly, so that is why you don't remember everything, you just remember a part of the information, and now you have to share that particular information to your team. So how will you do that? You only remember half of the information. So in that case, your uh, this problem that you have forgotten, this can create a barrier in the process of communication. जब हम चीज़ें भूलते हैं, जब कुछ बोलना होता है और हम भूल जाते हैं, जब कुछ करना होता है जब हम भूल जाते हैं, so that is basically that basically creates a problem in the process of communication. तभी proper communication नहीं हो पाता है, and that's how poor retention causes a psychological barrier. ठीक है, जब हम याद नहीं रख पाते हैं चीजें, जब we cannot remember things properly, then that is known as poor retention, and that can cause a barrier in the process of communication. ठीक है. Next is loss by transmission. So this is another again important part of the communication process. So transmission मतलब क्या होता है? Transmission means when an information is exchanged, when an information is shared with many people, when an information is sent to people, okay, from one person to the other, so that is transmission. So when there are a lot of people involved in a communication process, so there is a chance of losing the actual message or the information. Okay, so that is known as loss by transmission, especially in case of oral communication. So there is a high chance of loss by transmission. जब हम transmit करते हैं मैसेज, जब मैसेज एक से दूसरे तक जाता है, दूसरे से तीसरे तक, तीसरे से चौथे तक, so then a lot of things change when you communicate orally. A lot of things can change, and the last person who gets the information might be something that is only a 10% of the actual information. Okay, so that is known as loss by transmission. क्योंकि oral communication में what happens is that we don't remember all the things, and we tend to forget things, and that is why the truth of the particular subject or the topic or the information is lost towards the end. And especially in case of especially where there are a lot of people involved and you're using the oral communication medium, so then definitely we are human beings, we can definitely forget things, and loss of transmission can create a barrier in the process of communication. And so that is why written communication is preferred in case of something official or in case of something confidential, important, so that you do not lose that information, because our mind keeps on forgetting things, and that is why the message can be changed, and the message can be can take a shape. So that is why for something that is very important, that is official, that has to be stored for a longer period of time, we prefer written communication. Okay. Next is distrust. So when you don't trust the other person, you cannot communicate with the other person effectively. All right, when you do not at all trust the other person, you won't be able to communicate with the other person properly. So there must be there must be some sort of trust in between both the parties, that is the sender and the receiver. Then there can be a good communication. But if there is lack of trust between the sender and the receiver, then the receiver is not going to listen to the speaker properly, or the receiver is not going to bother about what the speaker is saying, or what the sender has said to him, and the sender would also not be able to reveal all the information because there is a lack of trust in between them. Okay, so this is all about psychological barriers. So if you have any doubts, you can quickly ask me.
मैम
Hmm.
मैम लास्ट पॉइंट है तो आपको दिखाऊं
Last or point two, distrust.
यस
Okay. So distrust means when you are not being able to ট্ৰাষ্ট দ্য আদাৰ পাৰ্চন, যেতিয়া ইটো মানুহক বিশ্বাস কৰিবলৈ পাৰা নাযায়। কমিউনিকেট কৰি আছা, তুমি কাৰোবাৰ লগত কথা পাতি আছা, কমিউনিকেट কৰি আছা, बट यू आर नॉट बीइंग एबल टू ट्रस्ट द अदर पर्सन, सो तुम क्या करोगे, तुम उस इंसान से कुछ चीजें छुपाओगे, अच्छे से कम्युनिकेट नहीं कर पाओगे, बात नहीं कर पाओगे, क्योंकि सब कुछ रिवील नहीं कर पाओगे। सो इन दैट केस देयर माइट बी अ प्रॉब्लम because you are not being able to reveal all the necessary information because you don't trust that person, और जो दूसरा इंसान है वो भी तुम्हारी बातों में इतना ज़्यादा ध्यान नहीं देगा क्योंकि the other person also doesn't trust you. So अगर trust नहीं है दोनों parties के बीच, that means if there is no trust in between the sender and the receiver, then effective communication does not occur, क्योंकि जो सेंडर होता है वो सेंडर क्या करता है, बातों को अच्छे से नहीं बोलता है क्योंकि ट्रस्ट नहीं करता है रिसीवर के ऊपर, एंड रिसीवर भी क्या करता है, अच्छे से नहीं सुनता है क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट ही नहीं है, ट्रस्ट ही नहीं है. सो देयर हैज टू बी सम काइंड ऑफ ट्रस्ट इन बिटवीन द सेंडर एंड द रिसीवर इन ऑर्डर टू हैव एन इफेक्टिव कम्युनिकेशन. नाउ एम आई क्लियर? Now am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so these are some of the causes of psychological barriers. So again, I would just like to repeat what is psychological barriers. So psychological barriers are basically related to the limitations of the human mind. ठीक है, जैसे कि memory, attention, perception. So it is related to the human mind. Psychology मतलब our mental state, our mind. So it is totally related to the limitations of the human minds, that is memory, attention, perception, and the other things. And I had also explained you why these barriers occur. So it occurs because of distrust, it occurs because of because of poor memory, it occurs because of premature judgments, premature conclusions, it occurs because of lack of concentration, and another thing that I had explained is it occurs also because of loss of transmission. That means whenever the information is exchanged, especially in case of oral communication, and whenever there are a lot of people involved, the message change. So the message that reaches the last person in that communication process has a different meaning and has a, it's just a 10% of the original message. So this is how psychological barrier takes place in the process of communication. Psychological barrier is totally related to the human mind. It is totally related to the limitations of our mind. Okay. Next is physical barriers. Okay. Number 2, the second type of barrier is physical barriers. So when you cannot reach the other person, when there is a barrier in between both of you, so it might be a geographical barrier, it might be some other kind of barrier which is stopping the free flow of communication, which is stopping you to personally meet the other person, that is known as physical barrier. Okay. So some examples are given, such as marked out territories, empires into which strangers are not allowed. So in some empires, in some territories, you won't be able to enter. If you want to meet someone from that particular territory or from that particular empire, you won't be able to directly contact that person or personally meet that person. Why? Because you're not allowed to do that. There is a barrier. Okay, so that is a physical barrier because you're not being able to personally meet the other person. Next example that is given is closed office doors, then separate areas for people of different status. So in large organizations, in big organizations, sometimes you are not able to meet people you want to meet to, because maybe because of a different status, or maybe because you are not allowed to do that. So suppose you go to meet the prime minister, you won't be allowed to directly meet him, isn't it? You won't be allowed to go to his office. You have to, do a lot of formalities for that. That is also a barrier. If you want to personally contact him, you won't be able to do this because he's of a different status, he has a different status, and you are not allowed to meet that person personally directly. Okay, then large working areas can also act as physical barriers, because you are working in a wing A and your friend is working in wing D. Okay, and it's a large organization. Wing A, B, every wing is a large, you know it's a large area. And if your friend is working in in wing D and you're working in wing A, you won't be able to meet him whenever you want to, because you have to travel, and then you need to go to wing D to meet your friend. So when there is a large working area, you whenever you want to meet somebody who is away from you, you won't be able to meet that person because of the physical distance, because of the distance, and because the units are physically separated from one another. Next is residing in different states or countries. So this is a geographical barrier. So when you stay in some other state or in some other country or in some other continent, you won't be able to meet the people of your hometown whenever you want to, isn't it? Definitely you can contact them over the phone, you know using any video conferencing apps, but you won't be able to personally meet them whenever you want to. And that's how the physical barrier takes place. Okay, so suppose you have come to study in Guwahati and you are someone who is from Dibrugarh. Okay, now your parents, they stay at Dibrugarh and you are currently staying in Guwahati. So whenever you want to meet your parents, you won't be able to do it, isn't it? Because there is a barrier, that is a geographical barrier, because you are living far away from them. So especially when people are separated due to distance or due to certain conditions, then that is basically known as physical barrier. And noise is also known as a physical barrier. Now this noise means जब लोग हल्ला करते हैं, ठीक है, जब कुछ शोर शराबा होता है, so that can be also considered as a physical barrier, because that is stopping you to communicate with the other person properly. All right, so I hope it's clear. If you have any doubt, you can ask me regarding the physical barrier. फिजिकल बैरियर अगर समझ में नहीं आया है तो प्लीज लेट मी नो. जब भी हम एक दूसरे को पर्सनली नहीं मिल पाते हैं, सो दैट इज बेसिकली ड्यू टू सर्टेन रीजंस, कुछ रीजंस के वजह से, जैसे कि सपोज मैं दिल्ली में रहती हूँ, तुम मुंबई में रहते हो, सो देन वी वोंट बी एबल टू मीट ईच अदर पर्सनली, इजंट इट? सो दैट इज अ फिजिकल बैरियर ड्यू टू डिस्टेंस, स्पेशली बिकॉज ऑफ ड्यू टू जो भी बैरियर्स, जो भी हम पर्सनली जब किसी को नहीं मिल पाते हैं किसी डिस्टेंस के वजह से या किसी को कुछ रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस के वजह से या नॉइस के वजह से, या whenever the communication is stopped, whenever there is a problem during the communication due to these physical distances and noise and everything, then that is known as physical barrier. All right, so अभी time खत्म होने वाला है, so time is
मैम
so
attendance
yeah, what are you saying?
मैम attendance में দিব পৰা নাই
Attendance দিব পৰা নাই? কিমান roll
নাই।
number? What is your roll number?
85
85,
5
right? Okay.
Ma'am, can you check
483.
107? 107, ma'am.
107. Yeah.
Ma'am, 49. Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
49, ma'am.
49. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
15.
50.
21, ma'am.
21, 15. Okay.
54, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Eight-
67.
83, ma'am.
57, I have marked you present. Okay, you can drop your roll numbers in the WhatsApp group.
67,
Okay,
ma'am,
the ones who
67.
couldn't respond, listen to me, the ones who couldn't respond, so you can drop your roll numbers in the WhatsApp group itself. Okay,
Okay, ma'am.
so that I can check and then I can mark you present. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me.
Hello, ma'am.